Today I spoke to Duncan Weatherston and Clem from Smile Health about SmileCDR, which is one of the leading engines for FHIR data use and APIs, and how it is bringing together different data models into a common standard at scale globally. It's a really interesting conversation about how this shift in data models is going to power a new era of competition in the digital healthcare industry. And it also shows the perils of trying to do a podcast on a busy convention floor. Well, look, thank you for joining me. I'm here today with Duncan Weatherston and Clem from Smile Health and purveyors of the Smile Clinical Data Repository product and many other solutions as well, of course. Now look, SmileCDR is one of the most recognised engines for the FHIR standard in healthcare. How are you seeing it applied to greatest effect globally at the moment? What are some of the projects that are exciting you the most?
So, one of the interesting things about a FHIR platform is it's so globally applicable that there are use cases in every market. What we find is the payer markets are driven by the need to share information with their members, and they have a mandate in the US to do this. But more importantly, the payers are driven by digital transformation because historically they don't collect health information very effectively. And so we find there's a big market in the payer community where they have a strong appetite for clinical data and no history of aggregation. Similarly, internationally, we find ourselves playing a role of an HIE. When you're at a country level, there's often a need to be able to, especially in environments where there's public medicine, there's a need to be able to aggregate information across all of your population and make it available in clinical engagements at acute care settings, in referrals, in primary care. And all of those use cases require a mechanism to both gather the information, but importantly, to be able to share it back with those constituents. So we find that to be a very big market for ourselves as like a national HIE or something along those lines. And then lastly, there's a strong demand in the provider market to be able to deliver capabilities that transcend any individual electronic medical record system that they have purchased previously. So you could imagine somebody who's got a Cerner instance and an Epic instance have a relatively uncollaborative data environment, but they have patients who are visiting their various locations, and they need to have an aggregate view of their patient information. Our platforms are an ideal way to solve those problems. And then in the process of doing that, they get the benefit of being able to apply clinical reasoning, they get the benefit of being able to apply engagement with the payer community, which gives them accelerated payment pathways. It really gives the providers a mechanism by which they gain control over their information external to the specific EMRs they purchased.
Let's dig into the clinician experience a little bit more. That's my background, of course, and my great passion is to provide clinicians with solutions that they love to use.
Right.
There's often not a lot of love for EHR or EMR systems. It's not atypical for clinicians to feel like it takes a long time for new stuff to come through the pipeline. And clinicians are not terribly motivated or interested, unless they're into clinical informatics, of what the underlying data model or data standards are. How does SmileCDR provide benefits to clinicians in terms of being able to get up new digital initiatives and new models of care and new ways of working that are pleasing for them to use?
So the thing to think about from healthcare's perspective is an offshoot of what you just said. The driving motive behind the common clinical interfaces is the user experience, to the extent that's been any good at all, and not the data underpinning it. And what that's led to is a very large diaspora or distribution of health information repositories and collections that are incompatible. And what that drives is inability to create clinical interfaces that take advantage of information. And so we've got a bit of a vicious cycle there. The advantage that SmileCDR brings is that we're enabling a common data tier that every application can be built on. And my experience in 25 years in healthcare is that every doctor has in their heart some secret application they've been just longing to build to transform the care community. And so what we bring to the table is all the data they need to build against, right? Their patients, but more than just their patients, other people's patients. And the mechanism by which their applications can then be rolled out globally to people who've got similar infrastructure with similar standards and similar terminology and all of the things that provide that underpinning in a data model. And so our vision for how we transform care from a clinical perspective, from the doctor's experience, is we empower them to be able to build applications that meet their needs, build workflows, find out ways to use new technologies like machine learning or clinical reasoning to augment their capabilities, partner with the community in a way that enables them to take advantage of everybody else's innovation and bring it back into their workflows. And that, to me, seems like a magical fit that's going to come as we expand this data. And what we're seeing is that in places where the information is available, there are already startups who are looking at how they take advantage of that. But this is just the beginning. There's going to be a very, very large opportunity for the clinical community to develop care capabilities that have been heretofore unavailable as a consequence of the paucity of data.
So because at the moment data lives in a lot of clinical silos, it's hard to coalesce together. With Smile taking care of a large proportion of the back end and bringing that data together in one spot, it actually empowers clinicians to bring technology projects to bear much more quickly, which can be scaled out to other jurisdictions, even globally, because the back end is harmonized, it's stable, it's well understood. Now, SmileCDR is in a very advantageous position. Of course, it's one of the most recognizable solutions in this space globally. Maybe this is a question for you, Clem. You've also got the Happy or Health API solution, which has some crossover with SmileCDR. What's the difference?
Well, SmileCDR is built on top of FHIR, as are many products in the marketplace today. And we're all solving different problems, and what we see, what SmileCDR does as a data platform is to solve real-world problems, right? The scale, the performance, security, all those things around it. FHIR is a library to enable you as a starting place to build out those solutions. What we've done is, because of the experience, the broad experience we've had, the problems that we've had to resolve, we've encompassed that into the data platform. So out of the box, we've anticipated some of these problems that customers are going to encounter. So as opposed to starting from scratch and building from there, we already have a solution that's relevant to their real world experience, running their businesses, as opposed to open source versus not. I mean, that's the main difference.
Yes.
So one of the really important things is Happy was the mechanism by which we explored FHIR in the early days. We've continued to maintain it as an open source, which we give to the community because we believe in the value of a common data model. And we don't think everybody needs an enterprise-grade platform that will solve a broad array of issues that are driven by large populations or the requirement for very rapid responses. There's definitely a case for people who have small applications and small need not to spend money on infrastructure, but to be able to take solutions that are already built for them and roll them out. And so we strongly support the open source community. We continue to give away our open source product, and we will continue to give away our open source product for well into the future. The vision that we have as a platform is that if people are willing to adopt a new way of thinking about information, then we can help lead them to this outcome, which is far more scalable and effective than where we are today. But these are separate problems, right? Like the problem of should we all be using a common data model and is this open standard FHIR a good thing is something we believe in from grassroots, and we'll continue, like I said, we'll continue to back that. The second problem is how, and this is one that we were solving, the thing that made me start the business. When you're a clinical community that has at-scale issues, thousands of doctors, millions of patients, hundreds of hospitals, how are you able to aggregate that information and then make it effective in a way that is able to keep up with the volume and flow of that information? And historically, the way people have done it is they've gone to those sort of cloud solutions and say, well, the disk is fast, therefore my data must be fast. And because healthcare data is so interrelated and complicated, they miss the challenges associated with the way you structure queries, the way you link information, and they don't come up with scalable solutions. And it's been over and over and over again that we've tried and seen that not go the way we want. So what we've built on top of this component is the scalable capability to deliver healthcare outcomes in large environments. And that's the real distinction, right? Our goal here is an enterprise infrastructure that allows you to do clinical reasoning, which isn't in FHIR, to do the layer of master data management, the layer of ingestion, the transformation from other protocols into a common platform, the awareness of events and the delivery of events and the distribution of events in a meaningful way. All of that capability can be built from the open source, but we've been doing this for years. That's why we've got such a complex product.
Yeah. So Happy represents something that's available for free, open source, that can be downloaded to prototype and bring solutions to life.
Absolutely.
And it tracks the FHIR standard as closely, if not more closely, than any other engine that's available. I believe it's the most downloaded FHIR engine in the world. And then for the purposes of scale up, for enterprise rollout, that's where SmileCDR comes in.
Exactly.
So one of the things that I've heard said, not uncommonly, is that FHIR isn't really suited for high performance applications. It's got inherent performance limitations and scalability limitations. What would you say to that?
Every data approach that has to write and read from disk has inherent challenges. FHIR is a mechanism for describing the character of information exchange. It's an API for making those requests, and it's a data model that has the structures and relationships that you need to identify the major components of healthcare, right? 80% of what you need is there. How you implement it, how you realize the underpinning technology, disk, memory access, all those things that make an application fast or slow is independent of the standard itself. So I think a claim that says, because you frame information in this way, you've impacted performance, is missing the boat. What impacts performance is how you write your application, how you relate the fields, how you drive that sort of complexity in technology. And that's up to us as technology vendors to resolve, right? Our goal is to be able to easily manage 1 billion people's records real time, with the clinicians participating, with events happening, and we're headed there, right? We're building out the technology to do that, and with that in mind, when you're at that scale, people can try and claim that it's not performant, but you can sort of put the lie to it by just demonstrating that it's working. And until you do that, people can make those claims. So we'll keep working towards that.
Yeah, and the benefit of the data standard is, of course, that every provider or innovator in the world can immediately hit the ground running, knowing what they're working with.
Exactly.
And then it's up to effectively architecting the hardware, effectively architecting the query patterns, to ensure that whatever your use case is runs as fast as you like.
Exactly.
Using the right combinations of storage, of memory, of compute, and where the data resides, whether it's close to the user or further away. How does Smile help shorten speed to value and implementation time?
Sure. So the key value prop of a data platform is that it takes away the baseline activities everybody would have to do. Our goal is to minimize the amount of infrastructure effort anybody has to put in to be able to build applications, to be able to solve clinical problems, to be able to store information, retrieve information, and then interact that information meaningfully. If you don't have that infrastructure already built, then you have to do it yourself every time. You have to discover the failings and the strengths every time. You have to do all of the testing and validation. There is so much effort that goes into what is a commonly repeatable capability that we abstract away. And more importantly, what it gives everybody who takes advantage of it is the ability to work together and then have that same scalability as collaborative bits of software, right? So if you want to compete with somebody, fair enough, you do the same thing twice. But if you're building a component which you feel solves a problem, but you're using a common data model, you can build on the work of others, like Newton said, standing on the shoulders of giants. There's lots of great companies out there doing amazing things. You can start with what they've done and then build the next level. And you see this already in other markets where people build adjacent technologies to complement something like Epic. But because that's a closed system, the value of those adjacent technologies is constrained to that closed system. When you do that in an open standard like FHIR, the net effect is that everybody benefits from this sort of collaborative strategy. And our vision is to facilitate those things, not compete with them. And so by building out the baseline infrastructures, our hope is that others will be able to start from where we leave off and really start to provide that transformation in care like a clinician could, or like somebody who's a deep specialist could. And we're going to support them all the way.
After several decades, our industry doesn't need software vendors to create new back-ends for storing patients and results and procedures and allergies and conditions. It's been done. Let's talk a little bit about Smart on FHIR. For the benefit of our listeners, FHIR and Smart on FHIR are two different things with two different intentions. Smart on FHIR, of course, is a standard and a mechanism for front-end integration of applications so that they can seamlessly launch between each other and save users from having to log in again, find the patient they were working on again. How does Smart on FHIR feature in the Smile ecosystem?
So from day one, we valued Smart on FHIR. I think the work that the Smart team did is fantastic, and we support it completely. The value prop here is that it provides a authentication authorization framework, a context framework for interaction that allows the participants to work with many different repositories using the same code base. So once you build a Smart on FHIR app, as long as the thing you're talking to is standards compliant, your application will work. And there's methodology within the standard on FHIR to be able to determine what's supported by a server, what's required by an application, and that fit, and then to be able to determine how it's going to get rendered and used. But the key value here is that the Smart on FHIR application allows application developers to not be dependent on a single technology. As we talked in the last comment about the adjacency, when you build a Smart on FHIR application, you could work just as easily with Smile as you could with OneUp Health, as you could with anybody else who supports the spec effectively. And I think that sort of abstraction really allows for the characterization of building the thing that you want, and then relying on infrastructure like ourselves to be able to deliver value, because it doesn't force you to live with us. We're going to support you to the best of our ability, and we'll do what we can. But if you want to be broadly adopted, and there are people who aren't on our platform, I don't think we should try and own the market. We should be a player in it. Then your application efforts are not wasted. You can reuse them and reuse them and reuse them in a meaningful way. And I think that's the real beauty of the Smart FHIR standard.
I agree. It seems to me just to be a very elegant and beautiful way to become unstuck.
Exactly. And that's the whole goal here, right? The whole reason for using an open standard. You're not stuck on the technology side in either way. We have this abstraction that says, as long as we adhere to this interface, I can change my technology without breaking you, and you can change your technology without breaking me, and we can all participate in the same ecosystem while we all do this innovation without any of it falling apart, because we've all agreed at the boundary what we're going to do. It's really critical that characteristic is what we adhere to.
And in a healthcare organisation of any sufficient size, the traditional data architecture at the moment would be that every single system has its own copy of all of the patients, of all of the results, of all of their conditions and comorbidities. This really changes that paradigm with Smart on FHIR and FHIR as the underlying data exchange mechanism, doesn't it? Because
Absolutely.
you can have all of these systems operating off the same data core at the centre, rather than having duplication, essentially, that all needs to be maintained in sync.
Yeah, I think this is one of the critical aspects for the healthcare community and others, is historically, if you want to decommission an application, you're decommissioning the data with it. And if you want to be able to take advantage of that information, you have to go through an expensive transformation process to move the subset of information from the system you're decommissioning into the system you're standing up. And so this continuity of information becomes a major obstacle to innovation and transformation. Once we land on a common strategy for information, then the applications which build on top of it have the flexibility to change over time without the challenge of the deprecation of the historical information that was acquired under the previous implementation. And importantly, it forces application developers to remain current, because if they're stagnating, someone else will create capabilities that surpass them and then become more viable. And quite frankly, the information can then be moved appropriately to the destination. So you can imagine it changes the model in which people are thinking about how you build health applications and what the focus should be. And realistically, it's better, because the people who are building the end user applications don't have to worry about, how am I going to support this historical information? How do I change my technology? They're able to focus entirely on maintaining the best interface and the best capabilities for their client set. Things which are intuitive and usable. What you started with, clinicians hate their interfaces. This is an opportunity for us to stop worrying about the infrastructure and start worrying about the interfaces and the ways to make it better. And I think in the long run, that data persistency and that data consistency is going to help. But in the short run, of course, it's a fairly significant structural change for the application environment.
It inherently makes the market landscape more competitive, doesn't it?
Exactly.
and the best solutions will win because they can be brought to bear.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, I'd like to talk a little bit about partnership and alliances, and I've noticed here at HIMSS in 2023 that you're also a part of a presentation with the Fireball Alliance. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
So Fireball started off as the FHIR Business Alliance. I think that Fireball is a great name. And what we're focused on with FHIR Business Alliance is bringing the community of vendors and other people who implement together so that we can emphasize the importance of the efforts, so that we can provide vision on how we see as a vendor community the evolution of the business need behind it. And it gives us a chance to really advocate for the adoption and use of FHIR in places where the standards community maybe doesn't have the same traction. And so, we love the standards community and we support them, and we're never going to try and step on their toes. So our vision as an organization is to augment and supplement the awareness efforts that others are doing. And with that in mind, what we love to show is that just because we have competitive products, or because there is overlap, or because we have a variety of capabilities, we can't be partners as well. And this is the thing that's really neat about the FHIR community, is we don't have the same elbows up strategy that the rest of healthcare does. We view each other as complementary. We view the efforts we're putting in as aggregate, and we view the outcome as beneficial for all of us. And the market is so large and the opportunity is so deep that there really isn't a ton of zero-sum games where if one person gains, the other person loses. This is really just net gain for all of us, and we're trying to figure out how we establish ourselves in that market. And so the Fireball community is driven by the idea that if we can bring more and more people to bear and more interest to bear, collectively we can be more transformative. And as we lead that transformation, others will get the value. So we're really supporting the FHIR community, we're supporting the business vision behind it, and we want others to be aware that the value prop of participation is far greater than the costs.
Yeah, this is something that I firmly believe in. The market is big enough, and the demand for innovative solutions that can assist in delivering better value care more efficiently is so huge that you don't need to benefit at others' expense. And so, the clinicians, the doctors and the nurses and the allied health professionals who will be listening to this are thinking, yes, but how does this help me with the lines out the door in the emergency department or out of my clinic? How do these data standards help us more effectively deal with the current overwhelming demand for healthcare services that we're seeing across the globe? And so maybe as an example, I know that Smile recently made an acquisition partnership, and it's been accelerated by the data standards in which you support. So maybe you could talk a little bit about that acquisition, what it means, and how it's come together much faster than perhaps it might otherwise traditionally have happened in our industry.
Yeah. So the acquisition you're referring to is FHIR, who are a clinical quality language company, joined us, and we have such alignment as a consequence of our use of the standard and our vision of the value of healthcare. For example, FHIR has maintained the referenced implementation of clinical quality language as an open source product that anybody who's interested in doing clinical evaluation can download and use and develop. They have a very similar ethos to us, and they have a similar urgency to us. Sorry, I'm doing an interview here. I'm doing a blog here. Can you find somewhere else, please?
Oh, sure.
Thanks. They have such alignment with us and such an engagement with us that it was very easy for us to merge. Their technology runs on top of ours. We've been able to merge our open source solutions together and deliver a common product for the community to use for free, right? The vision that we have is that you'll be able to use the information you've acquired in the data tier with clinical reasoning to provide evaluative outcomes. So things like care gaps, things like the evaluation of quality measures in real time so you can tell how your clinical services are doing, things like real world clinical advice as you're at the patient's bedside, the ability to do assessments based on all of the patient information that's available across multiple sources as you're looking at the care you're providing. And I think one of the other things that starts to happen when you do this is you're able to build solutions that can do early triage and reduce the overhead for emergency departments. Or you can provide advanced pathways for care where you offload some of the administrative work and are able to bring the focus back to the clinical time you have. And so when you have shortened periods of time with patients, that entire time is not based on discovery and realization, it's based on focus on the clinical activities and the engagement with the patient. We give you the mechanism by which you can collaborate with your peers, so that, you know, in worlds where previously you might have had an assessment together where you can't do that in sort of this more distributed fashion, you can at least have a virtual version of it that's already working. There's so many of these ideas, and it's not just us. The community is providing these ideas. Now they've got access to the information and services, they're able to build things upon those that really start to solve problems that they're seeing in their environment. I think as we do that, what we'll see is the load on the clinicians that is driven by the burden of administration and documentation and note-taking, and all those things that people weren't becoming clinicians for to begin with, will start to be alleviated, and they can get back to the focuses they had on care, which will of course multiply their efficiency and deliver value in many different ways.
So instead of a point-to-point relationship where you have to go back to your supplier to achieve change and innovation, options are opened up so that we can all contribute as a community to identifying new ways of achieving best practice.
Yeah.
Wonderful. What's next for Smile?
Well, there's a lot. You know, we're growing globally. We have clients all over the world, and we're really interested in supporting clinical capabilities in what would be non-traditional markets for North American companies. We're really interested in the transformation of healthcare to what I call a post-internet economy. The idea that once you've got the information systems working properly, you expose application capabilities that can be consumed and delivered anywhere. You know, there's no reason why somebody in Europe couldn't be delivering services in real time to somebody in South America. There's no reason why products built in Asia couldn't be delivering value as they arrive to patients in South America. Like the whole idea of the internet, you could deliver and procure services from anywhere to anywhere with ease. And if you think about what that means for healthcare, it's transformative, because it means suddenly 6 billion people who don't get care can get care. And so for us, what's next is trying to enable that, trying to work with partners everywhere, try and deliver the value prop that we've been promised by information for so long in a way that is actually scalable and actually realizable. And we're doing that day by day with partners, with acquisitions, with sharing our vision, and we encourage anybody who's interested to come to the game. You know, compete with us, build like us, do what we want to do, because that's how we're going to change the world.
It's actually quite stunning to think in that way, and to actually be able to pick up and leverage solutions from and achievements, no matter where they happen to be, and to apply them at a local level. Look, I'd like to wrap things up there. Thank you so much for your time here this morning, and have a fantastic remainder of the conference here at HIMSS 2023.
Thank you so much. Pleasure.
Cheers.